what I would give to have learned all this sooner.
Learn what, mate? Actual science? How to do a thinking without falling down? The ability to walk and talk whilst avoiding toppling into the nearest well. Oh wait, never mind, this is new proof for intelligent design, so none of the above. That's all way too goddamn advanced for anything we are going to discuss today. Also, I enjoy the fact that you crossed out atheism for no fucking reason. You know that if intelligent design was actually what you lot pretend it is, you know, oh, it's just a scientific way of saying an intelligent creature could have done and everything. But it's also definitely our God though. If it was just the first part, an intelligent agent could have designed everything up to and including the entire universe, and atheism would and could still be utterly correct. Because something that's bigger than our universe still isn't necessarily a god. Could be some dude in his pants running simulations at college, for all we know.
There's actually a massive scientific mystery.
There are loads of scientific mysteries. That's kind of why we, do science. If there wasn't anything to know, we wouldn't, need to test the universe to figure out how it works. I just hope to atheismo that you aren't going to jump right into God of the Gapsing this shit with we don't know X, therefore God. Not that it isn't hilarious that you guys still do that. And yes, no matter your protestations, Darwin to dumbass, they really do.
Some scientists consider it the biggest scientific mystery.
Some scientists? Which scientists? Are they the ones that are actually experts in the field that mystery covers? Or are they creation scientists, pretending that the science they don't like because it makes creationism sound idiotic? Well, that doesn't have any answers because of the lies I keep saying about it.
But they don't really teach people about it.
Do they not? Well, there's two possible reasons for you saying that. One, they do, and it's just something that you haven't learned about because creationist, and you don't go out of your way to actually learn about new things because you already know God did it, and that's just good enough. Or two, it's something completely ridiculous that is utterly unscientific nonsense, so why the fuck would anyone teach anybody about this thing that doesn't actually advance scientific thought?
Let's think about the question, what is it like to be John?
Ah, God, it's terrible being John. It's just literally the worst. I mean, just ask John. He'll tell you. I mean, for starters, John, is that even a real name? No. It's a sound that you make when you're trying to get the attention of seagulls. John! And then there's the fact that he looks like that and dresses in those clothes and is just an out-and-out disaster of a person. Oh, no, of course I wasn't talking about you, John. I meant the other John.
This question is asking what the subjective experience of John is like.
Is it? Okay, I mean, I could be asking other questions depending on the context, but sure. Let's go with that. Well, if you use a little thing called empathy, it's a thing that we atheists have that dumbass theists apparently haven't learnt yet, and thus can't understand why we hate God so much, which is 100% why we don't believe, and I don't actually need to learn the reasons someone might not have the same opinion as me about something because of how smart and right I am all the time. But if you use that, you can actually have some small idea what it's like to be another person and why they might think, feel, or even do certain things. I mean, it's not always possible to empathize with people, and some people just aren't very good at it, but generally, it works well enough that most people have some idea what's going on with other people. Again, if you know how to do it.
The mystery is, we actually don't know why subjective experience exists.
Yeah, we do. They happen in brains. It's not some magical cloud of nonsense making it happen. It's the combination of umpteen bajillion synapses and neurons shooting at each other, making a complex web of processes that cause what we know as consciousness, which subjective experience is, of course, a part of. And I'll be using as a broad term for subjective experience. Now, the depths and the details of exactly how it works are still things we are some distance from fully understanding, but that doesn't mean we don't have some idea of where it comes from and how it essentially works.
We don't know how to create a machine with this phenomenon.
Okay, so what? We don't know how to make a fucking sun either. I mean, to be fair, we do know the mechanics of it, but we simply don't have the capacity or machinery to do so. But we could do it at some point, and there's no reason to think that as technology progresses to that kind of level, we couldn't achieve the same with either simulated or artificial consciousness comparable to our own. It's always so bizarre when people bring up that we don't know this yet, so, God maybe. When if you look back just a few short centuries, just how far we've come with science and technology. It's just complete intellectual laziness to assume that we've somehow peaked, and everyone always thinks that we're living in the future until the future actually comes along, and guess what? Present, baby! That's kinda how time works.
How do you make it like something to be a machine? Could AI have this phenomenon?
Could? I don't know, maybe. Does it? Fucking no. But considering you are showing ChatGPT there, that's only because a predictive model is almost certainly not capable of such a feat. It's not the kind of AI you are probably thinking of and is more guessing what the next letter in a string of letters is supposed to be. It's a bit like cold reading, but super duper fast.
What would it even be like to be an AI like ChatGPT?
Right, yeah, no, ChatGPT isn't what you are thinking of when it comes to AI. What you seem to be talking about is a general intelligence, something that at this moment in time isn't actually something we've made. It'd be a thing that can think and make decisions based on its environment and what it understands about the world around it. I don't know super duper amounts about it, as it is a deep goddamn topic, but what I do understand is that in order to make one, you would first have to make basically an entirely accurate model of our whole reality in order for it to know what to expect from that reality. And that seems to be a little bit complicated, to be fair.
Why is subjective experience such a mystery?
I mean, again, it depends on exactly what you mean, but if we give you, we currently know nothing about it, which just isn't true. I mean, we fucking do it every day. It would be weird if we didn't know something about it. But, well, brains are complicated, and currently the only way to get data on them is basically to scan them while they're doing stuff. And while we do have some amazing tech for that, it's not quite at the level where we can map it out at its most fundamental degree. So there's still lots that we can't really even look at yet, at least while it's, still working.
Well, you see, brains aren't magic.
Now he tells us. Here we were walking around thinking that brains are just buckets of unicorn jizz sloshing around in our heads. Thanks for clearing that up, mate. But, don't you think that brains come from a magic man who made them appear out of nowhere? I mean, if that's not magic, I don't know what else to call it. Also, yeah, brains aren't magic. Neither is subjective experience, FYI. And unless you can prove otherwise, you don't get to say it is, just in case you decide to try and slip that little shit nugget past us.
People tend to really mystify the brain, but it's more like a computer.
Like is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. I mean, as we currently make them, there's no computer that does things the same way as human brains do it. I think a better comparison is probably a network. Lots and lots and lots of nodes all doing various computation tasks with a shit ton of parallel processing. Also, networks like brains can be expanded, or in fact have parts of them taken out while still serving most, if not even all, of its original function. Computers are largely set, and if something breaks, the whole thing stops working. If a brain were like that, the slightest bump would kill you almost immediately. Now, it's not a perfect comparison, because brains and our current technology just aren't all that similar, but still.
While there are mysteries in physics, dark matter and whatnot, they don't really apply to things like the brain or computers.
Well, for starters, how do you know? And seconders, and whatnot. You mean fucking tons of different things, including quantum shit. That thing that they are, what was it again? Trying to make computers using the principles of. No, that doesn't apply to computers at all, if you ignore the totality of all the things we are still learning about physics. And even without those, computers literally run on physics, you dumb asshole.
Your brain is basic matter and its basic forces.
Okay, that's one way to put it. And let me guess, you're gonna get reductive as fuck and say It's just physics. How could physics make brain work? Therefore, brain really am magic somehow. But while sure, everything in the universe, give or take, can be reduced to it's just this shit, I think we both know it gets way more fucking complicated than that. Actually, I take that back. I don't know if you know anything.
These are the only 4 forces in your brain. Computers and brains follow our known model of physics. A physicist isn't going to look inside a computer or a brain and be like, whoa, that wasn't supposed to happen.
Well, actually, yes, they are. Well, not supposed to be, but they didn't expect that to happen. It's what we call emergent properties. When complex systems interact, they can cause the whole to have properties that the individual parts of the thing don't on their own, such as bird flocks and the complexity of ant colonies and the actions of large populations, also hydrogen bonds between molecules forming things such as water, and of course that piles and piles of atoms and cells can become living beings as we know them. And you're damn right, we have looked into things and gone, wait, it's doing what now?
The brain is really just a big Rube Goldberg machine. And by that, I mean it's just a big physical chain reaction.
Ladies and gentlemen, we found it. It's here and no one else is going to best it. That is the goddamn understatement of the fucking millennia. Just a big set of physical reactions in the same way that the ocean is just a big fucking puddle, or that Mount Everest is a kind of tall pile of rocks. It is such an understatement that it borders on just being fucking wrong.
Really, the whole world is one big chain reaction.
Yeah, and so is the universe, but to call it just that is to simplify things to the point where it doesn't explain anything. If I want to know how clouds form, I am going to need more than, well, it's just a chain reaction, isn't it? If I want to know where planets come from, it's not quite as simple as, have you ever heard of physics? And don't even get me started on whiskey, simply a product of the distilling process. We all know that it's wizardry.
For a quick neuroscience lesson.
Oh no, getting a neuroscience lesson from somebody who thinks that intelligent design isn't fucking nonsense. This ought to be good. And by good, I mean it'll either be nonsense or it'll be so basic it again borders on wrong. Or it'll just be an explanation that was, created by people who actually understand the science, and that animals and humans and the like were almost certainly not just popped into existence by God, man, and the masters of the universe. So, a little ironic that you like their science now, but when it's something that refutes you, well, wrong, apparently.
Your brain is a network made of billions of neurons. They're connected via synapses. If a neuron has enough inward synapses firing, then all the outward synapses fire.
Oh, it's the reasonably accurate thing. Okay, not sure how that's going to translate to therefore goddamn do the everything, but sure.
Basically, your brain uses this algorithm to do all of its thinking. ChatGPT actually uses a similar algorithm. They're both called neural nets.
I mean, they're both considered neural networks, but they aren't the exact same thing. Again, they are fundamentally different in many, many, many ways.
Now let's say you build a big Rube Goldberg machine. Maybe you even model it after the human brain. But regardless of how big or complicated you made it, you wouldn't really expect a Rube Goldberg machine to summon subjective experience.
No, but that's because a Rube Goldberg machine is a very specific type of thing that generally does all of the things it does in a linear fashion. If it did things differently from that, it wouldn't really be a Rube Goldberg machine anymore. It would be something that possibly could attain the emergent property of conscious thought, but it wouldn't be what it used to be anymore.
Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't.
It doesn't, because we know what a Rube Goldberg machine is. If it was something else, then it would in fact be something else.
But the question, what is it like to be my Rube Goldberg machine, probably wouldn't cross your mind.
You're absolutely right. I don't think of incredibly stupid questions when doing whatever task. Like, when I'm cooking a meal, I don't suddenly wonder if my oven might actually be a motorbike, because things that have certain definitions usually aren't a thing with a completely different definition, for fuck's sake.
You just wouldn't expect any machine to create that.
You might not expect it, but it can happen. It happens in nature all the time. It happens outside of nature. I mean, you are presenting your brilliant thoughts on an example of a human invention that is chock full of emergent properties. The fucking internet. It does tons of shit that we never would have expected it to do. Some intentionally, sure, but plenty of them not. Now, could the internet itself become conscious? I don't fucking know. But the point is, it does do things we never thought of, and certainly never intended it to. Like how fucking stupid people can become when given access to more actual facts than ever. That's fucking bizarre.
But the Goldberg machine that is your brain, for some reason, does have subjective experience. And that's the big mystery. How? Why would physical parts moving around also create this?
I'm not going to repeat myself. It's physical parts moving around at a scale and depth that boggle itself. 70 trillion synapses. Comparing it to a Rube Goldberg machine is like comparing a tomato plant in your back garden to the food output of fucking China. The scales are just not even remotely comparable and are likely not trying to achieve the same goals.
Subjective experience, in some sense, just shouldn't exist.
In no sense is that true. Just because you don't understand it and we currently can't fully explain consciousness doesn't mean that for no other reason than it's hard though, that it's not somehow allowed to be real.
Because if every Goldberg machine was just its physical components and movement, then our understanding of the world would be more complete.
Your analogy fails because, well, your initial analogy has already failed. Again, comparing all things to this one thing just doesn't make any sense and has basically zero explanatory power. That's why no one calls all things fucking Rube Goldberg machines. And I think you might have noticed that if you had actually done more than 5 minutes of research on the topic.
I mean, isn't it crazy? Subjective experience, the phenomenon that in some sense gives the world meaning, is just one big question mark?
Not really. I mean, come back in 1,000 years and that's probably going to be a really, really silly question because the answer will probably be no, it's not. We know how it works. All these things do this stuff. And if it isn't, if somehow we still haven't answered it by then, it still wouldn't be proof of anything other than humans can't figure out this thing yet.
Anyways, that was a quick lesson for context. But none of that was my argument.
Well, fuck me. So the context of you not understanding anything about physics or complex systems and how people aren't fucking toys, unless it's for my amusement, is needed for your argument, is it? Well, that just fills me with abject terror. This is going to be really fucking stupid, isn't it?
I'm not going to say the intro proves or disproves anyone's worldview. But regardless of what people believe, there's two things that are universally agreed upon. Subjective experience exists, and subjective experience is a mystery. There's just a lot of questions around it.
There being a lot of questions about something doesn't make it a mystery. And subjective experience, well, mystery generally means something that is nigh impossible to explain or understand. And that's just not true. There are explanations for large swathes of how our brains work and how those functions affect your experience. Yes, it's a challenging problem, but that's not the same thing as being too difficult to ever explain, for fuck's sake.
Now for the actual argument. I love this argument because I really only need this from the intro, a universal fact. Now let's look at one of the biggest issues with subjective experience. I personally don't believe it does, but some people would say that ChatGPT probably has some low-level consciousness.
Then they would be wrong because that's just not the kind of system that it is. It's not what it's doing and it's not comparable to those things that do. Mostly because it doesn't even have remotely the ability to understand things. It just takes input and spits output. There's not even low-level subjective fucking anything to that.
And it's possible. It's possible that ChatGPT has subjective experience, that it's like something to be ChatGPT. But here's the thing. ChatGPT wouldn't talk about it. Its neural net is not set up to say, a mysterious phenomenon emerges for me. Why does that happen? It's got these specific characteristics.
Meaningless. And that's because it doesn't, and it doesn't. If it did, again, it would be a different thing. It's just orders of magnitude less complicated in what it is and what it does than a fucking brain. And that's not to say they aren't cool. They really are. But it's comparing apples and fucking spaceships, dude.
But human neural nets are set up to speak about it. I'm talking about it right now. In fact, we come with the absolute belief of subjective experience.
I bet you I could find people who would say they do not believe in subjective experience at all. And also, there are people who simply are incapable of that kind of thinking because of severe brain damage or whatever. I mean, it might not be strictly fair, but it demonstrates your claims to be fundamentally flawed.
Why are our neural nets specifically set up to speak about such a thing? The existence of subjective experience and my body speaking about its existence is clearly not a coincidence. This means that there must be some level of causation tying the two together.
They aren't. They happen to be. It's not the same thing. Something having certain properties and then being set up to be that way just isn't how it works. Beaches aren't specifically set up to be a sandy paradise where you can go to relax. They just happen to be that way. You know, aside from all the ones that humans made. And they made them because they rather like them, but they're copying from a thing that happened because of the complex systems that make planets happen.
But what could that causation possibly be?
Let me guess. Fucking God, right?
How could we go from ChatGPT having subjective experience to it being programmed to speak about it?
If we accept your asinine idea, it's not programmed to do so. It becomes able to do so over time. Well, evolution is a thing that makes things more complex and more able to do various things. It's a well understood phenomenon, you fucking doofus.
You can think about it for now, but we'll get back to this question later. Instead, let's look closer at ChatGPT's hardware. ChatGPT is one of my favorite Goldberg machines. Once again, we don't know if it has subjective experience or not.
Yes, we do, and it doesn't.
But here's the thing. Subjective experience isn't in our model of physics. We can still figure out exactly how all of its hardware will move without knowing if it has subjective experience or not.
Complex systems aren't spoken about in the fundamental ideas that explain the basics of our universe. What a fucking amazing observation, Captain Dumbass. It's almost like separate ideas are separated out into their own fucking ideas.
In fact, we can figure out exactly how any structure will move without knowing if it has subjective experience. This is only possible if subjective experience doesn't have physical impact.
What does that even mean? And of course it does. Of course subjective experience has impact. It happens in fucking brains and changes them in all sorts of ways all the goddamn time. My God, what the hell kind of subjective experience happened to your brain to make you so obtuse? Oh, right. Creationism.
Now, don't get me wrong. The physical parts that one might say causes subjective experience are very important physics-wise. But the phenomenon itself isn't.
So physics causes subjective experience, but it also doesn't. I'll be honest, dude, I'm not convinced you subjectively even have a fucking brain at this point.
I mean, take the statement in. Read it as many times as you need.
I only needed to read it once. It's just wrong. Your ideas fail at the most basic level.
Now, the logic from here is pretty simple.
Go figure a creationist being simple. Right, go ahead. Let's see how fucking stupid your argument really is.
If subjective experience has no physical impact, then how are we talking about it? What could be the link from it existing to us talking about it? Well, you would need some form of intelligent design.
No, you wouldn't, because we already have a mechanism for systems becoming more complex, and we have already observed things without intelligent designers intentionally making a thing do a thing, doing that with emergent processes. God not needed, end of fucking story.
Wait, before you go, I have something super important to tell you. It's life or death. It will change everything forever. Nope, wait, it's gone. Oh well, probably wasn't important. But while I have you, don't forget to comment, subscribe and notify. And if you want more of my smexy voice, check out Mrs. Six's channel Spoonstaff Stories, where I narrate and voice all the videos, and she does the work. And if you want to support the channel, check out the merch store for cool t-shirts, or check out Patreon, memberships and PayPal to support directly. Finally, follow me on the medias of social to get completely pointless guff and to keep up on the latest releases. Oh, I just remembered what I was going to tell you. Whatever you do, don't touch the